Welcome back, Billy of Guernsey Shipwrecks. I'm JP Fallais, and today we're going to do a bit of a recovery. So we're going to go all the way back up Alderney and get this tidal flow meter we left on the Virago. A little bit overcast, it's cold, that's why I've got the jacket on. Not quite sure who's going to come today. Certainly Keeney, Matt and Dave. Dave's Matt's brother. And we're probably going to stay the night. Looking forward to this. It's very late in the year to be doing a tech dive, but this is kind of semi-tech to be honest. But it is very late, being November. But we need to get this tidal flow meter back, so we're going. I think this might be a night dive. It's our normal job, we never leave a good anchor behind. So we're going to send our shot back up. I've tied in there. I've tied in using a waster, so if I have to cut it, I'll cut it. But I think I should be able to undo that again. Richard has dropped the shot, probably less than 15-20 feet away from where the flow meter was. I think I'm pointing in the right direction. We'll soon find out. That's a bit of a relief. The tidal flow meter, or the profiler, is still in the same place. We didn't need to use... Oh, look, there's some Jersey divers anchor there. Must be. From when they dived it years ago. Knowing very little about this Olympic torch looking thing, or tidal flow meter, or profiler, or whatever it's called, I thought, well, if we've left it here, surely the wreck is going to affect its readings because it's going to be in the lee of the shipwreck or something like that. So I didn't quite know how this thing works, but we will find out later on. All the rope off of it's tangled around everything, so unfortunately it's going to have to stay here. At this depth we ain't really got time to mess around, so what we would do is untie it from this rope and we'll just send the whole thing back up. Now ideally we didn't really want to do this, we wanted to just knock it out of its base and then take the profiler only, but it looks like we're going to get the base back as well. Got a funny feeling the cobbler's not going to get his hammer back. We decided one bag wasn't really enough, If that one ruptured, we could lose it, so we're going to fill up 2 bags and err on the side of caution. Also, if one of the bags decides to dump its air on the surface or bobble or gurgle, at least we'll have some air trapped in another bag. I'm sure they know what they're doing on the surface. All our job is to send it up. Really helping Matt out big time here. Yeah, I'm providing light and a bit of moral support. And she's just about to go. Fingers crossed it goes up rather than across with the tide. I think it is. It's not going to go up very quickly because that base is quite large and there's quite a bit of resistance. It's got to pull itself through the water. But I think that's going back up to the surface okay. Now this is the nice time of the dive where we just get to go off and have a little explore. Matt's job is to go and see if there's a propeller. My job is just take a little look around, see if I can find any pottery or crockery that have got a name or badge or date or anything like that on. Loads of different size millstones and a few other little bits and bobs that are around here. I'm not going to go digging or touching stuff. It's basically just a bit of a reconnaissance. If I do find a bit of crockery or cutlery on with a date, it just helps us to we're 99% sure, well, we're probably more than 99% sure, we're almost 100% sure, 99.9% sure that this is the Virago. But it would be nice to get some crockery with dates on, or makers' names, or something else to help us date the vessel. This is just below the engine here, loads of coal. You can see parts of the engine there, some old steam pipes of some sort. This bowl has got nothing on it whatsoever. With it being around the engine, probably to do with cargo. The living accommodation would have been forward of here, up in the forecastle. Very hard to see because this shipwreck's collapsed. It's probably 2 decks and everything's on top of each other now. You can see some more ropes heading back up to the surface, and this is one of our old shot lines here. Surprised it's still here. I would have thought it would have been ripped off by now. The buff doesn't quite go to the surface. Not the most riveting bit of footage, but I basically have a little poke around this area. Sometimes you can get makers' names on the engines, but to be honest, I'm just wasting my time playing with the wildlife, waiting for Matt to come back. As this is our 5th dive on this shipwreck, we're quite familiar with its layout now. Me and Matt have swum the whole length of the shipwreck. Not right out the stern, but this is where Matt's going today. See if he can find a propeller anywhere. It's weird that some dives you see loads of crockery and then you go and do the same dive again and there seems to be none about anywhere. I do remember seeing some here. So this looks like some black transfer wear. Typical of the 1870s, 1880s, and that's a swallow design. Again, it's just a shirt and there's no name. And Matt's back already. That was a quick swim. It's a 43 metre dive and I was expecting to do 20 minutes bottom time, which is very, very comfortable. Not quite a bounce dive, but just long enough to clock myself up 25 minutes of deco. I'm going to spend a little bit longer on the bottom around the shut line, just having a quick look for some more crockery. But I do know this shipwreck is deadly when the tide turns on. I think it's time I went and untied and went up the line with Matt. Now, one of the benefits of you watching from home and not having to actually do the dive is we can fast forward it and miss out the 25 minutes of deco. I've been attacked by a couple of things and look at the long lengths of the stingers on this mauve stinger. Straight across the side of the face, but luckily I got away with it this time. still wrapped around my leg, but they are beautiful to look at. But thank God I got away without getting stung this time. Not that it really hurts, it's more like a falling into some stinging nettles.
See gloves. Okay. Come on, okay?
How was that for you?
It was brilliant, honestly. The viz is amazing. We didn't need the lights, point the light control.
Have you had it slack all the time?
Slacko.
Absolutely. You were north. When you came up, you were north of the wreck.
Is it?
And we are...
Now Matt's done a slightly shorter dive than I did, and he's only had a 15 litre, so he got out of the water quite a bit of time before me, which is good because that means he's on the boat and de-rigged, ready for me. All hands on deck for when I come to the surface. I've come off my 1830 helium back gas, and now I'm on 50% O2, which speeds up my deco.
That was brilliant, eh?
That was actually really good. That was like as dark as you'd want it, not any darker.
But without the lights, perfectly good, eh?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Completely up. I'll take that as well. Getting came to the surface. that was wow. Fair play to him.
Put your fins on or not?
I'll take my fins up, please, mate. Matt done a cracking job.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Oh, I feel. I wasn't lighting.
Hang on, whoa. Get the ladder up.
Ladder up. Is it beer or club?
Oh, you do it.
It's technical.
JP, there's no propeller.
Nah, you're like, there's a rudder, but there's no propeller.
There's the rudders there.
Well, you can see the end of the shaft.
Yeah, the rudder's there, that's about it.
I don't think the end of the shaft is there.
Well, it's got to be. The shaft's got to end somewhere.
Well, yeah, but I think it ends further in the wreck.
I think the propeller's up that way somewhere.
No, yeah, but I think they filmed the rudders.
Yeah, true.
Or the rudder. Did you see it?
Nah, I didn't go far back as you did, mate. There was no strobes on the line, so I thought I'm not going to go too far. I'll do the midway point. I looked at the engine.
Right, we're going in the warp power.
I want to show with me, man. Got the old lighthouse in the background.
Yeah. I've got the nav lights on because we need them.
Yeah, it's got dark pretty quick.
Yeah. The lack of that thing called sun, and it's the 9th of November, we haven't seen the sun this month.
That's one thing I miss is the sun.
Oh,
Yeah, well, I heard it only shines on the righteous.
Where's the harbour gone? Do we know? Just around the corner. It's too late to head home, so let's stay one night in Alderney. I really like this place. The dive has been done, the mission has been accomplished. Richard's got his flow meter back, but has it got any information on it? We're going to go dwell this over in the world famous Divers pub. Divers. Keeney's just looking at property now. Might buy one.
Yeah.
Kind of prices we're looking at of just freehold at 400,000. That's not bad.
44 High Street.
How much are we looking for that? 258,000. Oh.
Yeah.
Musical chairs. Little change.
305 pub as well.
Pub campaign, yeah. Are we trusted to buy pubs?
We can't go up Alderney without going to the Carre Hall for something to eat. We were good lads and we went straight to bed after the pub. And we're on our way back. Look at the water, it's like turquoise. And it always seems to happen like this. On the way back was glorious sunshine. Why couldn't we have dive conditions like this yesterday? As soon as we got back to Guernsey, we had to drop the tidal flow meter off to a specialist. Well, someone that knows a lot more than me and Richard. So we've finally got the flow meter to pull, and he's taken it apart, and fingers crossed we got data that's come out of these, and it is quite old and it's been there quite well, longer than we expected.
Yeah.
Have we got data?
I don't know.
Okay.
I've connected it, and
Yep.
I've taken the old skanky batteries out, and I was actually interested to see what they made them out of, so I opened them up. But it's only packs of cells of AA.
Because we were worried about that because they're 10 years old.
Yeah.
And Richard just said, you know,
Yeah.
I kind of fingers crossed that it's all good.
Well, this whole thing is what 12 years old now, and this a good one. This I'm not going to disturb it too much, but this, what was it down for? 2 months?
Yeah, I think we put it down end of July, and then we got it back last Saturday. So
Yeah. But
yeah,
the interesting thing is look at the build up. There's wildlife that has grown on it inside of 2 months. You see all these barnacles and things.
Yeah, so they must have crawled on it then, or slipped onto it, I suppose.
Well,
or did they?
Well, either that or they can grow that fast.
Yeah.
But they're new. In fact, they smell slightly now.
They do smell quite bad.
The interesting thing is, if you think about putting down, say, a tidal generator or something like that, if that kind of stuff grows after 2 months,
Yeah, that's true.
and every rotating part has got a set of seals and sets of bearings and stuff,
Very abrasive.
it's gonna make a bit of a mess of that. Anyway, shall we find out and
let's
see if there's any data? Now, if you have to excuse this, because being that old, it's actually Windows XP. This is so old, I'm not allowed to put it on our network because it's not secure anymore. So it's off the network. So anyway, let's have a look and see if there's anything in it. This is the piece of software that we have to use, and it's RS-232, which no one will remember, but it's very old communications.
It looks really old.
Let's see.
Fingers crossed.
Oh, it says it's connected. That's a bonus, because the connector was a bit wet when I took the plug out.
Oh, this thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Not inside, it was
No.
all right. It just smelt bad in there. I should ignore that.
okay.
So, record data retrieval. The one thing about it, being XP of this era, it's usually fairly slow. So, it knows that it was called Virago 01. So we'll get it to retrieve that data. And now we wait.
Oh, fingers crossed.
As I say, it's don't knock those wires.
No.
It's very slow. Maybe we'll come back when because it's
Yeah,
got 2% up. Maybe if we come back when
it's done.
it's done. Okay, so it downloaded that lot. Would it take about 15 minutes?
Yeah, I'd say 15
Something
minutes.
like that. Anyway, now that's just the getting the data from the profiler onto a file. To process the file, we have to use yet another piece of software. We open a data file, and we get the data, and this is our first chance of actually seeing what the data looks like.
Okay.
All right, and what have we got here? Okay, so this is data over time. So you can, and this here is the pressure above the profiler, and it's measured quite conveniently in meters of seawater. So you can see the pressure above the profiler rising and falling.
Oh, is that the amount of water above the sensor?
Yeah.
Oh, that's how it works. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Well, that's the way that part of it works.
Yeah.
And you can see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 4 or 5 spring tides, i.e., these are peaks. Every one of these peaks and troughs here, the peak there is the height of a tide. The low part is the low portion of the tide, and then obviously during a neap tide you get a smaller high and a higher low.
Yeah.
So you've got spring tides going along here, and this isn't going into a neap tide, and then back to a spring tide, back to a neap tide, and so on. And the other thing that's currently being recorded here is the sea temperature, just because it can, I think. So when it was deployed, the sea temperature was about 15.5 degrees, and when it finally ran out of batteries on the 18th of September, it had risen to 17.5 degrees.
Okay,
So
it's
that's
actually gone up.
Yeah,
The sea temperature, it actually
yeah,
followed the
yeah.
sea temp.
Yeah, the sea temperature actually lags, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the air temperature. So that's interesting. Heading, pitch, and roll are irrelevant to us because it's a fixed. It's a fixed profiler.
Okay.
Heading, pitch, and roll. If it was on a being deployed on a piece of string or on a mid-water somewhere and it was flopping around, then you've got to take heading, pitch, and roll into account. We shouldn't have to do that because it's fixed.
Yeah, and these little squiggly bits at the start here, is this us dropping it down?
Yeah, I think so. I think
seabed.
you'll find that this period here before it gets. Don't hold me to it. I think it's just probably rolling around in the back of Richard's car before it gets deployed.
That could have been on the boat going up there.
Yeah.
Could
So
be.
anyway, now I'll tell you a secret, and that is I never got very much success of getting data out of this. So from this, what I do is I get it to export the data into an Excel file.
Okay, so it's like visually you can see it a lot easier.
Well, I never had a lot of success with this piece of software. You can do things like expand this and see individual highs and individual lows, but seeing with a distance and tidal speed is tricky.
Yeah.
So I export it.
Okay.
And I think what we'll do, I have to export it here and then copy it because I'm not allowed to use the network.
Okay, that makes
It's
sense.
so old. And then take it to my office and we'll have a look at the data there. So that'll be the next bit.
Yeah.
Head off to my office and have a look at that.
Cool.
Okay.
Paul's office.
Oh, don't try not to show too much of the mess. Welcome to my world. Right.
Professor's room.
Okay. So what I've done, I exported the data out of that unit in CSV, and I'm importing it into Excel because that's about the best thing I've found so far. Okay, so this is the same data that we looked at earlier, only I've now imported it into Excel, and with the help of a good friend of mine, Mike, who's an absolute whiz at Excel, we've put it into pivot tables, which are work of the devil as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so we've now got here this is the tidal height above the transducer or the profiler, and you can see again we've got the highs of a spring tide in this region and then a neap tide here. And what we've done is we can now look at it, and if we look at some dates, okay, so we've got a spring tide going on here. At the spring tide, one thing I should point out that is the way the profiler works is that it sits on the seabed. All measurements are made with respect to the profiler's position on the seabed, and it has been set up before we deploy it. We set it up in this case to take the tidal speed and direction every 2 meters in the column above the profiler. So if the profiler is on the seabed, then we take a snapshot of the entire column and we have data for every 2 meters in the tidal column, data of the speed at the time of the tide, and also the direction in which it's flowing, because it's not at all uncommon to find that the direction will be flowing in one direction on the bottom and in completely another direction on the surface.
Makes sense. Yeah, we've seen that before.
Yeah, we've certainly met that before. So what I've got graphed here is let's have a look at 20 meters, about half the distance from the seabed to the surface.
Because our shipwreck's 40 to 42 meters, 43 meters,
yeah,
maximum.
Around that. And we can see here high tides and low tides. So we can see on the high to going low tide, we've pretty much got a fairly good slack, or we have a slack water appearing at pretty much every high to low going tide, regardless of whether it's a spring or a neap.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, but the other interesting thing is it's not reciprocal. On the low going to the high, there is no slack water.
Okay. So this is slack water where it comes down to there.
To zero, yeah.
And we're going down, and that's going up.
Yeah, we're reading.
Okay.
We're reading here. Just look at this date here, which is somewhere around there. Okay, so this is it. The same thing zoomed in. In the low going to the high, the lowest speed it gets is 0.5 meter a second.
Which what's 0.5 meter a second?
0.5 meter a second. 1 meter a second is about 2 knots of tide. So 0.5 meter a second is a knot of tide. Now, you know well as I do, diving in a knot of tide is quite a struggle.
Yeah, I'd say half a knot or more is it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. So this is undivable from our perspective.
And what we're saying, how fast is it still going there at its lowest point?
At its lowest point, it's probably going just over a knot.
Okay, so us, yeah.
And then if we say
that's almost walking speed for someone.
Yeah, probably just under. I mean, if you look at the range, it runs from in a spring tide, something approaching 7 knots.
7 knots of tide.
7 knots of tide, which is absolutely hammering it. Something like the Sylvia K can only do 6 knots.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So so we will be in effect going backwards.
Yes. Yeah, you wouldn't have even got to the site.
7 knots. Yeah, 7 knots, 8-9 mile an hour, almost 10 mile an hour.
Yeah. So
and people, I mean.
So from our perspective, this information does tell us pretty well the speed of the tide, and then heading is also given. So we can see that pretty much on a high water, which accounts, say, to that point there, it literally just changes it does a reciprocal. It moves completely 180 degrees.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
On the low water, it doesn't. It moves slowly. Over the low water, it goes from about 240 degrees to just over 200 degrees. So it swings and then it flips.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're probably looking at the data, we've probably been diving it a little too late, because you're saying the surface is still running, the bottom is slack.
Yeah. So in future, I think we need to get in there a little maybe earlier than we would have liked.
Yeah.
And that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Going down a few divers on the shot line, you might pull the buff under.
Yeah.
So you might need some bigger buffs.
Yeah.
Possibly.
So interesting data.
It is very interesting, and I'm kind of I'm glad we've done that, because now to do this and do the dive, we could have gone up and tried it on the flip tide and wasted our time.
Yes.
An hour and 40 minutes up to Alderney, and we wouldn't have seen a slack.
No.
It just wouldn't have slackened up. It just would have just turned straight away. Ah.
I need to think about how that comes about. I think it's got to be geographical. I think it's a narrow gap between Alderney and France, and if it moves from a narrow gap, it moves faster. So we're getting faster on the highs.
Oh, so it's coning in.
And as it opens out after Alderney, it slows.
Yeah.
And conversely, when it goes from a wider space into a narrow one, it's going to be quicker. So I think that's why it must be that way. There's otherwise I don't see there's any reason why one direction of tide should be faster than the opposite. But
okay.
Geographical maybe.
Perfect. Thanks. Well, that's cleared up a lot of a lot of information that we would have liked to have had when we dived it the other time, where we were hanging all on that line, flapping around. We just basically got in too late, because I got in the water, went down it, and it was like a pig's tail, the rope, and I thought, great, slack water.
And I mean, it's always going to be challenging when you see how little time there is with less than half a knot of tide.
Yeah. So
it's
it is
very, very specific amount of time.
Yeah.
It's only on one state of the tide. It's quite an unusual place.
All right.
Welcome to Alderney.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for doing that for us, Paul. That's hope that's helped everyone else to understand why we put a tidal flow meter on there, and the information we've got is absolutely fantastic, to be honest. And the more you look at it, the more data that you can get out of it. So, okay. Thanks for that, Paul.
Okay.
Paul's office is interesting. All these he's actually made, physically machined and made. All these little steam engines. And they're fully working as well. The Red Wing hit and miss.
That was an American one.
That's awesome.
That's a proper spark engine. It's hit and miss engine. It's actually got a spark plug in it.
Langbridge double diagonal.
Oh, that was fun. That's one of my favourites.
That's awesome. The detailing on it as well. Even the fact that the pistons have been sheathed in timber like they would have been as well. If you're still with us, well done, and thanks for coming along on another dive, and I'll catch you on the next tide.